In a small, quiet town where everyone knew each other's business, Officer Karen Dawson stood out, not for her bravery or dedication to protecting the community, but for her sharp tongue and harsh demeanor. She had been with the police force for over a decade, and while some praised her as tough, others whispered about how she often singled out people of color during traffic stops or neighborhood patrols. Karen didn't care what people thought. She believed her badge gave her power, and she wielded it recklessly. One sunny afternoon, Karen was patrolling the outskirts of town when she spotted a red sedan driving slightly above the speed limit. She flicked on her sirens and pulled the car over. Behind the wheel sat Maya Johnson, a bright 22-year-old college student with dreams of becoming a lawyer. Maya had just finished visiting her grandparents and was heading back to campus. Her long braids shimmered under the sunlight, framing her face like a crown. Karen approached the car with an air of superiority, tapping on the window with her flashlight. "License and registration," she demanded curtly. Maya rolled down the window and handed over the requested documents, keeping her voice calm despite feeling uneasy. Karen glanced at the papers before returning them with a frown. "You were speeding," she said firmly, though there wasn't any real proof, just her word against Maya's. "I'm pretty sure I wasn't going that fast," Maya replied politely, trying to reason with her. But Karen wasn't interested in explanations. "Do you think I don't know how to do my job?" she snapped, her tone dripping with condescension. Maya felt her cheeks flush, but she bit her tongue, knowing better than to argue further. Still simmering with frustration, Karen decided to make an example of Maya. She claimed there was an outstanding warrant for unpaid parking tickets, a claim Maya vehemently denied. When Maya asked to call her father, a well-known figure in their community, Karen scoffed. "Oh, big shot, huh? Think your daddy can save you now?" She sneered, ignoring Maya's protests as she cuffed her and shoved her into the patrol car. At the station, things escalated quickly. Maya refused to stay silent, demanding answers and insisting she hadn't done anything wrong. Her defiance only fueled Karen's anger. Determined to assert dominance, Karen concocted a cruel plan. Under the guise of enforcing booking policies, she declared that Maya's hairstyle, her beautiful braids, was unacceptable. "We'll have to fix that," Karen muttered coldly, already calling for someone to bring clippers. Maya's heart sank as she realized what was about to happen. Tears welled up in her eyes as she begged Karen to reconsider, explaining how much her hair meant to her identity and culture. But Karen wouldn't listen. To her, this wasn't just about compliance. It was about control. And so, surrounded by indifferent officers who chose not to intervene, Maya watched helplessly as chunks of her hair fell to the floor, leaving her scalp bare and exposed. Word of the incident spread like wildfire. A rookie officer, disgusted by what he witnessed, secretly recorded parts of the ordeal and shared the footage online. Within hours, outrage erupted across social media platforms. People from all corners of the country rallied behind Maya, condemning Karen's actions as cruel and unjustified. What started as a routine traffic stop had spiraled into something far bigger, and neither Maya nor Karen could have predicted what would come next. The cold, sterile room at the police station felt suffocating as Maya sat on a hard metal chair, her hands trembling in her lap. Her once beautiful braids now lay scattered across the floor like discarded scraps of her identity. The sharp buzz of the clippers still echoed in her ears, and every glance in the mirror confirmed what she already knew. Her head was shaved clean. Tears streamed down her face, not just from the physical act, but from the deep humiliation and violation she felt. This wasn't just about hair. It was an attack on who she was, her culture, and her pride. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed, wearing a smug expression that made Maya's stomach churn. To Karen, this was a victory, a way to assert dominance over someone who dared to challenge her authority. She convinced herself that Maya deserved it for being difficult, ignoring the fact that her actions were cruel and unnecessary. Other officers in the room shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with both Maya and Karen. Some muttered under their breath, calling the situation over the top, while others simply looked away, unwilling to intervene. Maya tried to steady her breathing, focusing on the anger bubbling inside her instead of the shame. She reminded herself that she hadn't done anything wrong, that Karen's behavior was rooted in prejudice, not justice. Still, the weight of the moment pressed down on her. How could something so small, a traffic stop, turn into such a nightmare? She thought about her family, her friends, and how they would react when they saw her. Would they understand? Would anyone believe her? Hours passed before Maya was finally allowed to leave the station. A friend picked her up, gasping in shock when she saw Maya's shaved head. "What happened to you?" she exclaimed, tears welling up in her eyes. Maya recounted the entire ordeal, her voice shaking with emotion. By the time she finished, her friend was furious. "This isn't right," she said firmly. "We need to tell people what she did." That night, Maya stared at herself in the mirror, trying to recognize the person staring back. Her reflection was unfamiliar, stripped of the vibrant braids that had always been part of her identity. But beneath the hurt and confusion, a spark of determination began to grow. She realized she couldn't let Karen get away with this, not just for herself, but for everyone else who might suffer similar treatment. Unbeknownst to Maya, the rookie officer who had witnessed the incident was wrestling with his conscience. He replayed the scene in his mind. The sound of the clippers, Maya's quiet sobs, Karen's callous demeanor, and knew he couldn't stay silent. Using his phone, he discreetly recorded parts of the interaction, capturing Karen's harsh words and Maya's desperate pleas. Though he risked his job by doing so, he uploaded the video to social media late that night, adding a caption, "This is what racism looks like." By morning, the video had gone viral. Thousands of people watched in disbelief as Karen's cruelty unfolded on screen. Comments poured in, condemning her actions and expressing support for Maya. Hashtags like #JusticeForMaya and #StopIllicitAbuse began trending nationwide. News outlets picked up the story, amplifying calls for accountability. Protesters gathered outside the police station, holding signs that read, "Respect our rights," and "No more abuse of power." As the public outcry grew louder, Karen started to feel uneasy. At first, she dismissed the backlash as exaggerated drama, convinced she was justified in her actions. But as more details emerged, including testimonies from other victims of her mistreatment, she began to realize the enormity of what she had done. For the first time, cracks appeared in her armor of arrogance. Yet even as the world turned its attention to Maya and her plight, no one suspected the truth that would soon come to light. Maya's father was far more influential than anyone imagined, and his reaction would change everything. For Maya, for Karen, and for the entire town. The days following the viral video were a whirlwind for Maya. Strangers reached out to her on social media, sharing messages of support and solidarity. Some sent heartfelt notes about how her story resonated with their own experiences of discrimination, while others praised her courage in speaking out. Despite the overwhelming kindness, Maya couldn't shake the heaviness she carried inside. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and unsure of what would come next. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications, but every time she looked at her reflection, all she could see was the bare scalp that reminded her of Karen's cruelty. Her family rallied around her, determined to protect her from further harm. Maya's mother, a soft-spoken woman with a fierce streak when it came to her children, refused to let her daughter face this alone. "We're going to make sure justice is served," she promised, holding Maya close as they sat together on the couch. But there was one person Maya hadn't told yet: her father. Judge Elijah Thompson was a towering figure in the legal world, known not only for his sharp mind, but also for his unwavering commitment to fairness and equality. He had spent decades fighting for marginalized communities, often putting himself on the line to challenge systemic injustices. Maya hesitated to involve him, fearing the backlash might affect his career or reputation. When Maya finally mustered the courage to call her father, His reaction was immediate and visceral. On the other end of the line, Judge Thompson listened silently as Maya recounted the events step by step. The traffic stop, the fabricated charges, the humiliating haircut. His voice trembled with anger when he spoke. "This cannot stand," he said firmly. "No one deserves to be treated like that, especially not my child." Though Maya had expected sympathy, she hadn't anticipated the depth of her father's rage. It wasn't just personal, it was professional. As someone who had dedicated his life to upholding justice, hearing about such blatant abuse of power cut deep. Judge Thompson wasted no time springing into action. He contacted civil rights organizations, reaching out to lawyers and activists who specialized in cases of police misconduct. Together, they began building a case against Karen and the department that had allowed her behavior to go unchecked for so long. Meanwhile, Maya agreed to give interviews to major news outlets, sharing her story with millions of viewers. Each time she spoke, her words grew stronger, more confident. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a voice for change. Back at the police station, Karen started to feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. The public outrage showed no signs of dying down, and internal investigations were launched into her conduct. Officers who had once turned a blind eye to her behavior now distanced themselves, fearing association with her growing scandal. Even her superiors seemed eager to wash their hands of her, suspending her without pay pending the outcome of the inquiries. Karen tried to defend herself, insisting she had followed protocol and that Maya's accusations were exaggerated. But the evidence against her was undeniable. Not just the leaked video, but also testimonies from past victims who came forward to share their own stories of mistreatment. One by one, cracks appeared in Karen's carefully constructed image of authority and control. For the first time in years, she found herself questioning whether she had gone too far. As the investigation unfolded, whispers spread through the town about Maya's connection to Judge Thompson. People pieced together the truth that the young woman at the center of the storm wasn't just any college student, but the daughter of one of the most respected figures in the legal system. The realization sent shockwaves through the community. If anyone could hold Karen accountable, it was Judge Thompson. And if anyone could spark real change, it was Maya. What had started as a single act of cruelty was quickly becoming a catalyst for something much bigger, a movement to demand accountability, respect, and justice for all. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Judge Elijah Thompson took his seat at the bench. His presence commanded immediate silence, a stark contrast to the chaos that had surrounded the case in recent weeks. Reporters lined the back of the room, cameras clicking softly as they captured every moment. Maya sat in the front row alongside her mother, gripping her hand tightly for support. Across the aisle, Karen Dawson sat slumped in her chair, her usual air of confidence replaced by visible unease. For the first time, she seemed small, fragile even, as if the weight of what she'd done was finally pressing down on her. When Judge Thompson called the session to order, his voice echoed through the room, calm but firm. "This is not just another hearing," he began, his eyes scanning the crowd before settling on Karen. "It's an opportunity to address conduct unbecoming of those sworn to protect and serve." He paused, letting his words sink in. Everyone present could feel the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just about one officer or one incident. It was about accountability, integrity, and whether justice would prevail. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat when she realized the judge overseeing her preliminary hearing was none other than Maya's father. Her face paled, and beads of sweat formed on her forehead. She glanced around nervously, hoping someone might offer reassurance, but no one met her gaze. The officers seated nearby avoided looking at her altogether, their loyalty eroded by the mounting evidence against her. Even her lawyer seemed hesitant, flipping through papers without making eye contact. Judge Thompson proceeded methodically, reviewing the details of the case. He highlighted the inconsistencies in Karen's account of the traffic stop, pointing out how there was no concrete evidence to justify her actions. Fabricating charges and subjecting a citizen to degrading treatment under the guise of policy enforcement is unacceptable, he said sternly. His tone left no room for argument. You wielded your authority not to uphold the law, but to intimidate and humiliate. That is a betrayal of everything this badge represents. As he spoke, Karen's hands trembled in her lap. She opened her mouth to defend herself, then thought better of it, closing it again. The arrogance she once wore like armor had crumbled, leaving behind only fear and regret. For years, she had operated under the belief that her position made her untouchable. Now, sitting before Judge Thompson, she understood how wrong she had been. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Karen as she exited the building. Microphones were thrust toward her face, questions firing rapidly. Do you regret your actions? What do you have to say to Maya Johnson? How does it feel knowing you're being judged by her father? Overwhelmed, Karen broke down in tears, covering her face with her hands as she pushed past the crowd. It was a far cry from the defiant woman who had smirked during Maya's arrest. Gone was the bravado. All that remained was a broken individual grappling with the consequences of her choices. Meanwhile, Maya watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. Part of her felt vindicated seeing Karen reduced to tears, but another part couldn't help but feel sadness. This wasn't the outcome she had envisioned when she first spoke out. She hadn't wanted revenge, just justice. As her father joined her outside the courthouse, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, Maya turned to him. "Dad, will things ever really change?" she asked quietly. Judge Thompson sighed, his eyes reflecting both weariness and hope. "Change takes time, Maya," he replied. "But cases like yours shine a light on the flaws in the system. People are paying attention now, and that's the first step toward making things right." Inside the courthouse, the hearings continued, laying bare the extent of Karen's misconduct. Outside, protests grew louder, demanding reforms within the police department. What had started as a single act of cruelty was now a rallying cry for accountability and equality. And though the road ahead promised to be long and difficult, Maya knew one thing for certain. She had ignited something powerful, a movement that wouldn't fade anytime soon. The investigation into Karen Dawson's actions intensified with each passing day, uncovering a pattern of behavior that shocked even those who had heard rumors about her. Internal affairs officers combed through years of records, interviewing past victims and reviewing body cam footage from previous incidents. One by one, stories emerge of unnecessary force used during routine stops, harsh treatment of minority drivers, and fabricated charges to justify arrests. What had once been dismissed as isolated complaints now painted a clear picture. Karen's abuse of power wasn't an anomaly, it was systemic. Judge Elijah Thompson played a pivotal role in ensuring the investigation remained thorough and unbiased. Leveraging his influence, he worked tirelessly behind the scenes, collaborating with civil rights organizations and legal experts to push for transparency. "This isn't just about my daughter," he told reporters during a brief press conference. "It's about holding everyone accountable, regardless of rank or position. Justice must be blind, but it also must be fair." As evidence mounted, public pressure reached a fever pitch. Protesters gathered daily outside the police station, chanting slogans like, "No more abuse" and "Accountability now." Social media campaigns amplified their voices, keeping the issue at the forefront of national discourse. For Maya, seeing such widespread support was both empowering and overwhelming. She attended rallies alongside her father, speaking passionately about the need for reform. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring others to share their own experiences of mistreatment. Karen's life unraveled rapidly under the scrutiny. Suspended without pay, she became a pariah within the department. Former colleagues distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with her tarnished reputation. Neighbors avoided her at the grocery store, whispering behind her back. The once confident officer who strutted through town with an air of superiority now spent most of her time indoors, blinds drawn, hiding from the world she had once dominated. Legal proceedings moved swiftly, fueled by the mountain of evidence against her. Charges were filed, not only for the incident involving Maya, but also for multiple counts of misconduct stemming from prior cases. When Karen appeared in court for her arraignment, she looked nothing like the woman who had smirked during Maya's arrest. Her hair was unkempt, her face pale, and her hands trembled as she pleaded not guilty. Reporters captured every moment, broadcasting images of her downfall across news outlets nationwide. For Maya, watching Karen's fall from grace was bittersweet. On one hand, she felt a sense of vindication, knowing that justice was being served. On the other, she couldn't ignore the sadness she felt seeing someone reduced to this state. "I never wanted this for her," Maya confided to her mother one evening. "I just wanted her to understand how wrong she was, to admit what she did and promise to do better." Her mother nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes people don't realize the harm they've caused until it's too late," she said gently. "But your courage has opened doors for change. That's something worth holding on to." Amidst the chaos, the police department scrambled to address the growing calls for reform. New training programs focused on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation techniques were introduced, and policies regarding excessive use of authority were rewritten. While some criticized these efforts as too little, too late, others saw them as a step in the right direction. Judge Thompson remained vocal, urging officials to go further. "Policy changes are meaningless without accountability," he warned. "We need systems in place to ensure no one else suffers like my daughter did." As Karen awaited trial, her future uncertain, Maya began rebuilding her own life. With her shaved head now growing into short curls, she embraced her new look as a symbol of resilience. She threw herself into activism, partnering with organizations dedicated to ending police brutality and promoting equality. Her story inspired countless others to speak out, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond their small town. Though the scars of that fateful day would always remain, Maya found solace in knowing she had sparked something bigger than herself, a movement determined to create lasting change. And while Karen's fate hung in the balance, one thing was certain: the events set into motion by Maya's courage would leave an indelible mark on their community, and perhaps the nation, for years to come. The courtroom was packed on the day of Karen Dawson's sentencing. Reporters jostled for seats, their cameras clicking incessantly as people filed in. Maya sat in the front row, flanked by her parents, her expression a mix of determination and quiet resolve. She had come a long way since that humiliating day at the police station, her shaved head now grown into short, curly hair that framed her face with strength rather than shame. Across the aisle, Karen sat alone, her lawyer having distanced himself after realizing how insurmountable her case had become. Her once imposing figure seemed diminished, her shoulders slumped under the weight of her circumstances. Judge Thompson presided over the proceedings, his presence commanding respect even from those who knew him only through headlines. As he reviewed the charges against Karen, his tone was measured but unyielding. "This court has heard testimony after testimony, detailing your repeated misuse of authority," he began, his voice steady and clear. "You targeted individuals based on bias, fabricated evidence to justify your actions, and subjected a young woman to cruel and degrading treatment, all while hiding behind the badge meant to protect and serve." Karen stared at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. For weeks, she had clung to the hope that somehow, someway, she could escape accountability. But now, surrounded by the very people she had wronged, she realized there was no escape. The judge continued, listing examples of her misconduct, pulled from years of complaints and investigations. Each word felt like a hammer blow, chipping away at whatever remained of her defenses. When it came time for victim impact statements, Maya stood up slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she approached the podium. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "What happened to me wasn't just about my hair or my dignity. It was about power," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You used your position to hurt me because you thought you could get away with it. But what you didn't count on was that I wouldn't stay silent. And neither would anyone else." Her words resonated deeply, not just with those present, but with viewers watching the live stream online. Tears welled up in some spectators' eyes as Maya recounted the emotional toll Karen's actions had taken, not just on her, but on her family and community. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, a rare occurrence in a courtroom setting. Even Judge Thompson allowed himself a brief nod of acknowledgement before restoring order. Finally, it was time for sentencing. After a moment of deliberation, Judge Thompson delivered his verdict. Karen was found guilty on multiple counts, including abuse of power and violating civil rights. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison, stripped of her badge permanently, and ordered to pay restitution to Maya and other victims who had come forward. The gavel struck with finality, sealing Karen's fate. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Karen as she emerged, escorted by officers. Questions flew at her from every direction. How does it feel to be convicted? Do you regret your actions? Overwhelmed, Karen broke down sobbing, collapsing onto the steps. Cameras captured the moment, broadcasting it to millions. For many, it was cathartic, a visual representation of justice served. But for Maya, watching from afar, it was something else entirely. Closure. That evening, Maya sat with her father in their living room, reflecting on everything that had transpired. "It's over," she said softly, almost as if convincing herself. Judge Thompson placed a hand on her shoulder. "Not completely," he replied. "There's still work to be done. Your courage has inspired so many, but we can't stop here. Real change takes time." Maya nodded, understanding the truth in his words. While Karen's conviction marked a significant victory, it was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Across the country, discussions about police reform gained momentum, fueled by her story. Activists cited her case as proof that speaking out could lead to tangible results. Schools invited her to give talks, encouraging students to stand up for what's right even when it feels impossible. As Maya prepared for her next chapter, graduating college and pursuing a career in law, she carried with her the lessons learned from this ordeal. She had faced cruelty, humiliation, and fear, but she had also discovered resilience, purpose, and the power of collective action. And though the scars of that fateful day would always linger, they no longer defined her. Instead, they reminded her of how far she, and countless others, had come in the fight for justice. Karen Dawson's life after her conviction was a far cry from the one she had once known. Stripped of her badge, her reputation, and any semblance of pride, she entered prison as just another inmate, number 42,719. The cold, sterile environment of the correctional facility left her feeling small and powerless, a stark contrast to the authority she had once wielded so recklessly. For the first time in years, Karen was on the receiving end of mistreatment, subjected to harsh words and judgmental stares from fellow inmates who recognized her face from news reports. It was a bitter taste of the same cruelty she had inflicted on others. At first, Karen struggled to adapt. She spent her days in silence, avoiding eye contact with anyone who approached her. Nights were worse. Sleep eluded her as memories of her actions replayed in her mind. She saw Maya's tear-streaked face every time she closed her eyes, heard the buzz of the clippers echoing in her ears. Guilt gnawed at her relentlessly, forcing her to confront the reality of what she had done. Slowly, painfully, Karen began to realize that her behavior hadn't stemmed from enforcing laws. It had been rooted in prejudice and arrogance. Desperate for redemption, Karen sought out counseling services offered within the prison. At first, she attended sessions reluctantly, unsure if she deserved help or forgiveness. But over time, she opened up about her upbringing, a childhood marked by ignorance and systemic biases passed down through generations. Her counselor encouraged her to take responsibility for her actions while also working to unlearn the harmful beliefs she had internalized. Change starts with acknowledgement, the counselor told her during one session. You can't rewrite the past, but you can shape your future. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, Maya continued to make waves. Her story had become a beacon of hope for countless individuals fighting against injustice. She graduated top of her class and delivered a powerful commencement speech, urging her peers to use their voices to challenge inequality. "We all have the power to create change," she said, her voice steady and inspiring. "But it takes courage to stand up when the odds are stacked against us." The audience erupted in applause, moved by her resilience and determination. Maya didn't stop there. With her father's guidance, she launched the Justice Through Unity Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting victims of police misconduct and advocating for systemic reform. The foundation provided legal assistance, mental health resources, and educational programs aimed at fostering empathy and understanding within law enforcement agencies. Maya traveled across the country, speaking at conferences and community events, sharing her story and encouraging others to speak out. Her message was simple yet profound. Accountability leads to healing, and healing paves the way for progress. Back in prison, Karen followed Maya's journey through limited access to newspapers and television. Watching the young woman she had wronged transform pain into purpose filled Karen with a mix of awe and remorse. She began writing letters to Maya, not to excuse her actions but to express genuine regret. In one letter, she wrote, "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I see now how wrong I was. Your strength has inspired me to try to be better, even if it's too late to undo the harm I caused." To Karen's surprise, Maya responded. Her reply was brief but impactful. "Your apology doesn't erase what happened, but I appreciate your willingness to acknowledge it. Real change comes from action, not words. I hope you'll continue to work toward becoming someone who uplifts instead of tears down." Encouraged by Maya's response, Karen doubled down on her efforts to rebuild herself. She enrolled in vocational training programs, learning skills that might help her reintegrate into society someday. Though she knew earning trust would take years, she vowed to dedicate her life to making amends. As months turned into years, the ripple effects of Maya's activism grew stronger. Police departments nationwide implemented new policies emphasizing accountability and cultural sensitivity, inspired by the reforms sparked by her case. Communities came together to demand transparency and fairness, proving that collective voices could indeed drive meaningful change. And though Karen's road to redemption remained long and uncertain, her transformation served as a reminder that even those who stray far from justice can find their way back, if they're willing to face the truth and commit to doing better. For Maya, this chapter wasn't just about punishing wrongdoing. It was about creating a world where such injustices wouldn't happen again. As she looked ahead to the future, she carried with her the lessons of resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring belief that every act of courage contributes to a brighter tomorrow. Years passed, and the scars of the past began to heal, though they never fully disappeared. For Maya Johnson, life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined on that fateful day when her world was turned upside down. Her shaved head had grown into a crown of curls, symbolizing not just regrowth but resilience. She had graduated at the top of her class, earned her law degree, and dedicated herself to advocating for justice. The Justice Through Unity Foundation she founded had become a national force, helping countless victims of police misconduct find their voices and fight for accountability. Maya's story inspired change far beyond her small town. Law enforcement agencies across the country adopted new training programs focused on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation techniques. Community oversight boards were established to ensure transparency and accountability within police departments. Schools invited Maya to speak about her experiences, and her speeches often ended with standing ovations. "We are stronger together," she would say, her voice ringing with conviction. "When we stand up for what's right, we create ripples that turn into waves." Karen Dawson, now released from prison after serving her sentence, faced a world vastly different from the one she had known before. Society had little patience for those who abused power, and finding work proved difficult. Many doors slammed shut as soon as employers recognized her name or saw her record. But Karen didn't give up. armed with the skills she had learned in vocational training. Culinary arts. She took a job at a local diner, working long hours washing dishes and prepping food. It was humble work, far removed from her days as an officer, but it gave her a sense of purpose. Over time, Karen found ways to contribute positively to her community. She volunteered at shelters, cooked meals for the homeless, and even mentored at-risk youth, sharing stories of her mistakes and urging them to avoid similar paths. Though some viewed her efforts skeptically, others believed everyone deserved a second chance. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Karen often said during these talks. "I'm asking for understanding. I made terrible choices, but I'm trying to be better, for myself and for others." One evening, Karen received an unexpected invitation to attend a fundraising gala hosted by the Justice through Unity Foundation. Hesitant at first, she almost declined, fearing backlash or rejection. But something inside her urged her to go, to face the very people she had wronged, and show them how far she had come. Dressed in borrowed clothes and carrying nerves heavier than any badge she had once worn, Karen walked into the event hall. The room fell silent as she entered. Eyes turned toward her, some curious, others wary. Maya spotted her immediately and approached with steady steps. For a moment, the two women stood face to face, years of pain and growth hanging between them. Then, without a word, Maya extended her hand. Karen hesitated before taking it, her grip firm yet trembling. "Thank you for coming," Maya said softly. "Your presence here shows courage and maybe hope." Tears welled up in Karen's eyes as she nodded. She didn't expect forgiveness, nor did she ask for it, but being acknowledged, not as a monster, but as someone capable of change, meant more than words could express. That night, Karen listened as Maya delivered a powerful speech about redemption and resilience. "Real justice isn't just about punishment," Maya told the crowd. "It's about transformation, for both the harmed and the ones who caused harm. We can't rewrite the past, but we can build a future where everyone has the opportunity to grow, learn, and heal." As the event drew to a close, Karen slipped away quietly, leaving behind a small note for Maya. "Thank you for seeing me as human. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve that kindness." Maya read the note later, folding it carefully and tucking it away. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, for Karen, for herself, or for anyone seeking justice, but she also knew that every step forward mattered. In the end, Maya's journey wasn't just about holding someone accountable. It was about creating space for healing, growth, and unity. And while the wounds of the past would always linger, so too would the strength and hope born from overcoming them. As Maya looked out at the horizon, she felt a quiet certainty that the fight for justice was far from over. But neither was the power of compassion to transform lives.